Hello, everyone. You're about to hear a synopsis of the film Notorious. Its plot is based on true events. 1983, Brooklyn, New York. Two high school boys dream of becoming famous rappers, but according to his classmates, bespectacled Chris will never make the cover of a magazine because he's fat, black, and ugly. Christopher Wallace is a straight-A student. He lives in the dangerous neighborhood of Batstay. His mother won't even let him off the porch. He's just met his father, who wants to return to the family, but the Wallettis don't want him or his stinking $100. Chris tearfully supported his mother, saying he was glad his father wasn't coming back. The very next day, he wrote a vicious piece about his negligent relative. Seeing the boys in new sneakers and with chains around their necks, Chris realized he no longer wanted to be the boy sitting on the porch. He asked Derek to teach him how to be a badass. See a junkie? Give him a high five. Take the cash and give him the stash of crack. Chris is now 17 and still making money by breaking the law. After talking to his mom, he didn't go outside right away, but instead popped onto the roof, where he had stashed high-end gear, gold, and even a gun. Chris is constantly rude to teachers, but he's smart and can easily solve equations at the blackboard. His teacher predicts a job as a garbage collector, but then he'll earn $4,000 a year more than the dumb professor. Chris met his girlfriend, Jim, and she blurted out she was pregnant. The young gangster clutched his head and panicked. His method of servicing junkies hasn't changed. He and Derek are the main dealers in the area. In his free time, Chris raps. Word of his prowess spread, and soon a guy named Prima challenged him to a freestyle battle. B.I.G. effortlessly dispatched his opponent, telling the punks about his rich life. A disgruntled mother was waiting for Chris at home. He'd missed 20 days of school in the past month. He simply didn't want to be a pauper like the doctor or computer specialist who'd recently come to school. He had more important things to do, especially since he was about to become a father. This news shocked his mother. Meanwhile, Valletta mentioned throwing out the dried-up baby food she'd been keeping under her bed. Except it wasn't baby food. Chris defended himself, boasting about his gold and a wad of cash. Valletta slapped his drug dealer son and kicked him out of the house. Chris continued selling crack. He even took money from pregnant women, something Derek had never done on principle. Soon, he opened his own business and put 4 young men on the street. Chris no longer hung out with the boys or dated girls. He spent his days counting his money. But soon, the guy screwed up and landed behind bars. Valletta would only pray for him. He got himself into this mess, and he's the one getting out of it. In prison, out of boredom, Chris started writing again, and over time, his lyrics got better. There, he also learned that he had a daughter. 9 months later, Olis was released and saw his daughter, Tiana, for the first time. Meeting with his guys, he declared that he would return to his old ways. According to him, supporting his daughter is no better than being behind bars. Biggie Smalls, as he calls himself, is drawn to the microphone. His friends say the rapper is cool and suggest he record a demo tape. Chris is soon invited by producer Sean Combs, known as Puff Daddy. The first thing Puff asks is if the rapper is still selling drugs on the street. He doesn't need someone who could end up behind bars at any moment. Chris is now 19. Puff promises him that if he pulls himself together and trusts him, he'll be a millionaire by the age of 21. Biggie Smalls could become as significant a figure for the East Coast as Tupac or Dr. Dre were for the West Coast. Chris flirts with a local girl, Kim Jones. They immediately sleep together. Puff comes to Biggie and tells him he's been fired, which means both his recording session and his contract are ruined. Despite this, he advises the artist not to return to street selling, but Chris doesn't listen, and soon he and Derek are arrested. What's more, a gun was found on the friends. One of them will definitely go to jail for possession of an unregistered weapon. They'll decide who exactly. Even though it's Chris's gun, Derek wants to take the blame. Biggie still has a chance, and for a second conviction, he's looking at least an A. Derek covered for his friend, and he was immediately released. Biggie immediately went to see Puff at his personal studio. He's mesmerized by the sight of professional equipment. All Puff can offer him for now is a university tour. Notorious B.I.G. was introduced on stage as an unknown rapper, and no one cared. However, when Biggie started rapping about skipping school, groping girls at 13, and having a gun under his shirt, the students loved it. Backstage, the famous rapper Tupac Shakur was listening to him. Suddenly, a crowd ran onto the stage and started a brawl, but it was staged, part of the show. Thus, Notorious finally won the hearts of the audience. Biggie now hangs out with Tupac, who is respected by everyone. One day, Chris noticed that his girlfriend has a good voice when she sang along to the radio and promised to make her famous. That evening, Chris's mother scolds him for not visiting her in a while and wonders what kind of normal man would call himself Puffy when her son mentioned his producer. Mark Pitts, Puff's producer and friend, defends him and says he's working hard. Afterward, Valletta confides in her son that a tumor was found in her breast and that she'll be having surgery the following week, to which Chris simply runs away from both his mother and the problem. Upon learning why Biggie is constantly sad, Mark tells him he needs to be a man and be there for his mother. A couple of weeks passed, and Puff's business was improving. He founded the record label Bat Boys Records and presented Big with a check for $60,000. Valletta was released from the hospital. Notorious' first single was recorded at the studio. True, besides gangster rap, he'll have to sing one cheesy song to get radio play. Chris has no desire to interact with his daughter. In the studio, Biggie mostly messes around, but when necessary, he switches up and delivers quality lyrics. Thus, a new star, Notorious B.I.G., was born. Bat Boy Records released his debut album, Ready to Die. Now Chris feels like a big shot. At the album release party, his buddy Tupac came up to congratulate him. Chris is still dating Kim Jones, but one day, during a photo shoot, Chris met R&B singer Faye Evans and immediately started hitting on her. Pretty soon, Biggie got his way and kissed Faye. Just 3 weeks later, he married her. The only problem is he's already producing his ex. And she started a scene right during the recording. Yes, he pulled her out of the woods, but she's having a hard time putting up with that kind of behavior. One day, Jen knocked on Faye's door with her daughter in her arms and asked Chris to at least visit her occasionally. Once, during a conversation with his wife, Biggie asked her not to call that hotel room, saying Mark would be there having sex with some woman. Faye realized something was fishy and, posing as a maid, burst into the room. Sure enough, her husband was cheating on her. The singer beat the woman and left. Later, Chris came to the studio to make peace with Faye and promised not to repeat it. But Biggie's relationship with Lil' Kim, who had become quite popular, only worsened. Biggie's new songs are quickly taking the charts by storm. The guy visited his hometown. He and Puff Daddy were constantly appearing on magazine covers. Perhaps only his good friend Tupac Shakur was more popular than him. One day, Tupac and his guys arrived at the skyscraper where Biggie was recording. He was attacked and robbed by armed men. Biggie went down the elevator to investigate. Just then, the police arrived. Tupac was shot 5 times. He is convinced that the East Coast guys, specifically Puff Daddy and Biggie Smalls, framed him. Later, at an award ceremony, Tupac's producer Suge Knight insulted Puff and advised young rappers not to record with that jerk. Thus began a war between the West and East Coasts. Journalists are adding fuel to the fire, claiming that Biggie's song, Who Shot You, is mocking the armed attack on Tupac. Even though Notorious stopped performing it, Tupac released his offensive song, Kill 'Em, which attacks Biggie. Chris ignores all of this, but he's completely blown away when he sees Tupac on the cover of a magazine with his wife, Faye. During an interview, he attacked her, throwing punches and accusing her of cheating. Puff asks him to calm down, especially since he just signed a contract that could net him $5 million. Faye packs her things, and Biggie apologizes again. But Faye, tired of forgiving him, leaves. Before another award ceremony, Notorious received a call from Westside with death threats. He also recently learned that Faye is pregnant with his child. Finally, he freaked out when, instead of a size 49, he was given a size 46. Puff had a heart-to-heart talk with him, and Notorious calmed down, but Tupac and Suge Knight ran him over on the street. He couldn't mend his relationship with his former friend. They had passed the point of no return. Rap fans were divided, arguing over which coast was cooler and who was to blame for the conflict between Tupac and Notorious. During Biggie's performance, the crowd booed him and disrupted the concert. The rapper, unfazed, demanded to hear the shooter's theme song, claiming it had been written a long time ago and had nothing to do with Tupac. On September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur was shot in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. The rapper died at the age of 25. Valletta called her son. She hoped the war between the coasts would finally end. A distraught Biggie rewatched footage of himself with Tupac. He soon had an accident, breaking his leg, and is now hospitalized. His best friend, D-Rock, was finally released from prison. He congratulates Biggie on his achievements. D-Rock, he's interested in his daughter Tiana, whom Biggie hasn't spoken to in a while. He advises the big man to be a man not only on stage, but in life as well. Christopher Wallace has decided to rethink his outlook on life. He finally met his daughter and has had a final falling out with Lil' Kim, even though he recently asked her to come visit him. After calling his ex-girlfriend slut, he turns to his daughter and tells her not to let any man call her slut. In his neighborhood, he saw a drug addict selling crack. And the woman hasn't aged. She's happy and raising a healthy son. Notorious tells Puff he's become more serious and wants to change his repertoire. Biggie has moved away from gangster rap and towards soul. To end the feud, Chris agrees to fly to Los Angeles on the West Coast to promote his new album. His mother is worried about her son and asks him to be careful. On March 8, 1997, Biggie, leaning on a cane, was strolling with friends through the streets of Los Angeles, planning to see his daughter again. He was being watched from a car. One of his boyfriends received a call threatening to kill Notorious. At first, Biggie was reluctant to go to the party, but then he plucked up his courage and agreed to hang out. He called his ex-wife to bring their son to him. The party was filled with hip-hop stars. Everything was going well, but the fun was suddenly interrupted. The fire department arrived and shut the party down due to overcrowding. On his way out, Notorious called Lil' Kim, apologized, and suggested they work things out. Chris Wallace's car stopped at a red light. Another car pulled up next to it. The shooter rolled down the window and fired 6 shots. 4 of the bullets hit their target, Biggie Smalls. His friends immediately took him to the hospital, but Chris died half an hour later. All his loved ones attended the funeral. His mother had to bury her son, who hadn't even turned 25 yet. Valletta asked that the hearse carrying Chris be driven through his hometown. Crowds lined the road to see the local celebrity off. Notorious Big didn't live to see the release of his second album. It was called Life After Death and sold 10 million copies.